Alrighty. So we are going to get started with our second session in the series of 3. If you all joined us for the first session, it was all around how to harness consumer transaction data to the fullest, collecting it, starting to activate on it. And in this session, we're going to start diving into, you are now starting to understand what your consumers are doing. So now the next question is, what do you do about that? How do you actually leverage that in a meaningful way as a retailer to start driving meaningful ROI? So just like last time, you'll notice the QR code on the screen. So we are doing some live polling, so feel free to join along for those at home. And so where we're going to start is a question. It's, why do we loyalty? Loyalty is now a verb, officially. Anyone in the audience? Anyone want to hazard a guess why we loyalty? What is it about loyalty that helps us as merchants? Why are we so focused on it? For those at home, we have a quiet audience right now. That's okay. Because I came up with answers. So there's been a lot of studies around loyalty in the entire industry, right? And so just a few of those studies show that it's a lot more cost efficient for a retailer to be able to retain a consumer that they already have. It's a lot more expensive for them to spend that marketing budget and spend to be able to conquest out and start to attract those newer consumers. So it's more cost efficient. They also find that those very loyal consumers tend to come back more often, tend to spend more money, and start to become their greatest referrals to drive additional consumers. So this is a long way of saying it's no surprise that there's so much money spent by retailers and by all merchants in all verticals on an annual basis just around loyalty strategy and all of its different iterations. So let's take a look at the live poll. Our question right now is, what are some of the loyalty programs that you all prefer? And again, I'm going to ask the audience, Chris, what's some loyalty programs that you're a part of? American Airlines? All right. Starbucks, big time Starbucks. All right, so you'll notice some of these are bigger, so a lot of people are choosing, it looks like Starbucks, which is great. I as well like my Starbucks. But this actually presents a few questions, right? One, I think the statistic is we are all part of roughly 16 loyalty programs. So then my question becomes, why do we only see a handful of these really coming to the forefront? And part of the answer is with another question, which is, what do we like about those loyalty programs so much that gets us to use that on a regular basis? Is it the kind of reward that we're receiving? Is it enabling a new incentive or experience that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to achieve being outside of that program? Is it the utility of that loyalty program and really using it on your time, by your demand as a consumer? So just questions that we really like to ask. But I think what this also presents is it's a really good time to be a consumer because we're starting to see a lot more retailers and merchants as a whole start to really drill in and focus on this. So as a consumer, you now have the advent of kiosks and self-service checkout. And so if you don't want to speak to anyone, you can now perform and transact how you like. So there's all this really great emerging technology that's coming out to really cater to all those different consumers when they're interacting with the different retailer brands on a daily basis. If you attended with us on our last session, this might be familiar, because similar to data, the big challenge that merchants have, especially with loyalty, is how do I deliver a consistent experience for that consumer across all my channels as I start to roll out new types of technology, for example, the kiosks. As a consumer, I expect that same experience on that kiosk that I do if I'm going to the POS, the same that I do if I'm interacting with you digitally on your website for an e-com transaction. So merchants, just like with data, they're faced with this growing fragmentation technology gap, and so it makes really rolling out global enterprise loyalty an increasingly big challenge on a daily basis. And this starts to give us the reasons why, if we look back at our poll, why you don't see 100 names on that poll, because it's a very big task, both from an investment standpoint and from a technology standpoint, to start to pull all of these back together so that you can really offer successful loyalty. And so, when we think about points-based loyalty, it's no surprise then that as consumers, everyone in this group, I'm sure, we all have buckets of points that we have sitting there because we flew an airline one time, but it's not our regular airline. Or we went into a store one time to sign up, and there was a really good incentive, and so we signed up and we got those points, but they've just sat there. So earning in the loyalty world is really easy. Redemption and utility of that loyalty program, which is the second piece, that's the true challenge. And so the technology gap is just one reason why we see this ease of earn but challenge when it comes to burn. So all that said, now we're going to transition to say, how does FreedomPay as a technology company that sits in the middle and works with all these retailers and partners in this grand ecosystem, how do we go to market alongside these enterprise brands to help solve for this loyalty gap? And when it comes to loyalty, you can think of these almost as, think of them as laws of gravity. You know, whether you're solving for that with a variety of vendors or if you're doing it through a platform, these kind of four core components are what we have found are they stand the test of time, as if you solve for these, then you can really break into that solve for the enterprise merchant where they can solve for this global loyalty on a regular basis and really clear that technology gap at the same time. So let's talk about the technology gap. If a merchant were to go vendor by vendor, this is what they would be faced with. They would be faced with connecting all of their individual revenue centers at a one-to-one integration level to a payment system, to any type of alternative payments that they're accepting, to third-party loyalty buckets. So that, you can start to see, becomes increasingly painful when it comes to not just performing a single integration when you first start to roll out loyalty, but then think about when you roll out kiosks and when you adopt new types of pieces of technology, you now have to re-perform all of these integrations. So from a back-end integration and IT standpoint, this becomes, again, increasingly challenging, and so it's no wonder why you'll see very effective loyalty channels really in a few case channels, but not everywhere within that merchant's estate. FreedomPay as a platform, what we do is we sit in the middle of that entire ecosystem, so we already have all of those integrations to the front ends, and we perform more integrations to the back ends so that retailers can simply just access FreedomPay as your one global commerce platform, and that then gives you the ability to start to play around with all of these, to be able to roll out these emerging technologies, connect your entire estate. The reason why that's important from a loyalty standpoint is because now you can start to offer not just payments across all these channels, across your entire estate globally. You can now start to also offer loyalty, incentives, rewards, points, and you can now very easily, through one partner, connect your entire estate. So that's how FreedomPay as a technology company rolls out and solves for that first, call it, law of gravity in being able to offer to those consumers an omni-channel experience through and through. Because that's, when you roll out a loyalty program, you're after adoption. One thing that is a killer of adoption is confusion to the consumer. So you need to be able to provide that similar experience throughout all those channels to take that confusion away from the consumer. So what's step two? And I'm going to ask for some audience participation in here. Step two is, if I want to get rewarded as a consumer, you have to identify me. So who in the audience, preference-wise, would you rather identify yourself as a QR code just by show of hands? Not a lot of love for QR codes for the people online. How about entering your phone number? Would that be easier or a preferable way? For those online, I am getting a lot of people just shaking their head no, so that's actually worse than QR code. There's other ways to recognize. There's also BIN-based with your credit card. So the point of this is, when you are offering global loyalty, consumer identification is key, because that's how you're going to identify as a consumer, so that the retailer can now understand what you've done and how they're supposed to reward you accordingly, so that we all in this area, we don't all get the exact same reward, right? If I spend more money, if I buy a certain product, if I have come visit your retailing shop 20 times a year, I should get a different reward than someone who hasn't. So consumer identification is really paramount. And what we do at FreedomPay is we control that entire consumer experience right in front of the consumer at checkout. So the methods that you're seeing on screen right now are a few of the methods that we employ on a regular basis at that global level. And again, for those online, some people liked QR code, not many liked the phone number, some liked bin-based. So we give that flexibility of choice because if you're doing cross-border, maybe one country caters more to QR codes, maybe another caters to a different type of identification. So flexibility in that consumer identification is also a really important task. What about for consumers that haven't opted into your loyalty program, but you would still like to come back and either get them opted in or to still transact with you? Think about a consumer who hasn't opted in but spends a lot of money with you. You would certainly probably still want to reward them so that they come back, so that you have another crack at opting them into your loyalty program, or just to get them to spend more money. We spoke about the analytic token in our last session, but as a recap, this is the ability for FreedomPay to be able to understand consumer transaction behavior through their payment method and be able to connect that across all of a consumer's payment method, even though they haven't opted into a loyalty program. So we can go to market with merchants in really two facets. Consumer identifies themselves and you reward them that way, or through the use of our analytic token that can start to create all of that payment history of that consumer along their journey as they transact, whether it's at your kiosk, whether it's through your mobile app, whether it's at the POS. And so we can connect that full story so that a retailer can still take advantage and perform loyalty right down to that consumer, even if they're not opted into your loyalty program. So I'm going to ask for more audience participation here. Show of hands. Who prefers just a straight up discount? Your BOGOs, your 10% offs? Oh, hands went up very quickly in the back for the BOGOs. Okay, fair enough. Who prefers a point-based system? I'm earning points on my transactions. Okay. I'm going to guess some airline flyers probably in the area. But when we talk about the third piece of what's necessary for kind of global loyalty, it's the flexibility to be able to offer different types of rewards and incentives. Because for those who are online, some people here preferred straight up discounts, some prefer points, and you're going to want to refine and iterate on your loyalty strategy. And so what FreedomPay does as a platform is we have that framework to be able to cater to the BOGOs, the straight up discounts, the earn and burning of points, both within your estate or outside of your estate, as well as a multitude of other different types of rewards and incentives. And that's really important because as you take your loyalty journey, or you start to go into your loyalty journey, you'll find that maybe you want to start in one place, but then you start to refine it and you become more evolved and more mature in your loyalty program. And so having that partner in the middle that already has that framework to be able to cater and to be nimble to offer those different types of incentives and rewards is really critical. So what's the last piece? You've now connected your entire estate, your omni-channel, so you're offering loyalty across every single revenue center that you have. You have your consumers identifying themselves, or if you don't, you're leveraging something like an analytic token with FreedomPay as your partner. You're offering a variety of different types of rewards and incentives, and you're A/B testing, and so you're refining and evolving. The last piece is, you've done all that, you have loyalty strategy implemented, so the last piece is, how do you measure that? What are the metrics on the back end? And so a critical piece of this is if you've done all of this work, you need to be able to measure it on the back end so that you can quite simply know what's working, what's not working, how can we get better? Am I determining specific new types of consumer trends that I want to hit in on? For example, I know that my highest spenders will come during this month and they'll spend on these types of SKUs, so now I'm going to incentivize them in a certain way to drive their behavior. Having those learnings and those understandings about the consumer trends allows you to then go back and refine and become smarter within your overall loyalty strategy that you worked so hard to connect across everything, to push out, to solve for consumer identification. So reporting is a key component of this. So what does this look like in the real world, right? The benefit that we see of our partners partnering with a FreedomPay from a platform standpoint is, again, we control the consumer experience. We have a device right here in our demo station, so we can deliver all of these rewards and incentives in real time across the entire estate of a merchant globally on a daily basis. And so what we're seeing a lot of appetite for is that seamless, premium, fast experience where you can solve for all of these, again, we'll call them laws of gravity within loyalty. That is why you don't see so many loyalty programs have such habitual use. The core few that have figured it out have figured out these four main components. And so this is how we roll out to market with them. To close, I'm going to end with answering a question that I assume was going to get asked of us, which is, where does FreedomPay as a technology player, having these conversations and rolling out with global partners different loyalty strategies, where do we see this going next? And to us, it's really twofold. We see in the future, one, the consumers are going to control their data a lot more and start to leverage that as a way to be able to generate further loyalty, to start to say, I'm willing to provide data in exchange for loyalty and incentives from the retailer. So we see that being a very significant path in the future, especially as consumers continue to care about privacy and all the consumer privacy laws. The other side of that is consumers still want to use their loyalty and incentives and points on their terms when they want to pay. So that's to say, I would like to use my points not only when I'm shopping at a Sephora or at a Foot Locker, I'd like to use those same points outside when I'm shopping for something completely unrelated. I have earned those points, and so I would very much like to spend them in whatever manner I want. So we see loyalty points really just turning into a unit across a larger global scale to be able to use on that consumer's terms. So certainly keep in mind, this is what we're seeing in the space. And if you stick with us with the third session that we'll be showing, we're going to show you what we're starting to show to this end and what we're actually rolling out on a daily basis. So thank you very much. This has been our session on loyalty. Happy to come up and take questions, but appreciate everyone spending the time with us. Thank you so much.